Hey guys, how you doing? As you can see, I'm a little bit further away from the mic than usual. This is due to the fact that the mic is already fairly stretched to its max on the stand, and I don't really want to try pulling it more because there is the very real possibility that it might snap or the springs could just shoot out and blind me, so I don't really want to risk any of that happening. So this is the max it is at. And as you can see, it's also due to the fact that I'm seated down this time. And this is also due to the fact that Comiket, at least for me right now, has just ended yesterday. So I kind of need to let the old bones in this legs rest a little, you know. After all, spending 2 days of walking around for almost like 6 to 7 hours carrying 10 kg plus loads on each of the days. It's, as you can imagine, quite tiring, and yeah, my body needs its rest before I get busy with all of the other stuff that's happening this week. So this is how we're gonna do the video, and hopefully the sound quality isn't too affected. But that said, since Comiket was just yesterday for me right now, it's still mostly fresh in this brain right here. The dementia has not settled in yet, so I figured now would be the best time to talk about all of the big things that happened this Comiket and some of the interesting stuff I found at the event itself. You know, the after report we've been doing the last few Comikets as well, and hopefully it'll be interesting this time as well. That said, I feel like with this time around, we can actually start off instead with the genre or series that has the most number of doujin circles making content for it. Okay, look, it's just Blue Archive, alright? I mean, are we really surprised at this point? For those of you who are out of the loop, Blue Archive has been topping the event since Comiket 102, and it has managed to continue it till this time. So they've got a three-peat. I think that's a word in some spot somewhere or another. Someone will probably let me know where that is from. But just to label home the point of how insane this is, especially for this specific Comiket, to begin with, Blue Archive has a smaller player base than both the MiHoYo stuff as well as Nikkei, so the fact that the Doujin content site is as big as it is already surprising enough. This also means that Blue Archive, because of the way that the circles are classified for the calculations, actually beat out the entirety of VTubing in its entirety, so including Hololive, Nijisanji, VSpore, whatever have you that I probably do not know because I'm too small brain to know all of the different publication companies in it that exist. Blue Archive beat out all of that completely. And this is in spite of the fact that, especially with this year's Comiket, just before it, there were quite a few terrible disasters that happened in Japan, as well as the high heat prediction, which basically caused the attendance at Comiket to drop, both for the number of circles as well as for the number of attendees. Blue Archive was one of the few genres, or I guess series in this case, that actually saw an increase instead during the period, going up by 200 plus circles, while things like FGO and Idolmaster was seeing a fall in negative 150. So not only was it experiencing very unnatural increases in the number of circles, but it actually saw it increase during a period where you would expect every other series to also be falling instead. And this basically puts it above most of the other classifications as well, because if we do not take out all of the non-anime classifications for the event, essentially the ranking would look like Blue Archive as number 1, VTubing is number 2, and in number 3 you have travel, trains, and mecha military all combined into one because of the way that all of the classification is done by the event. So people doing their travel reviews, people doing train as well, train station reviews, as well as all the people into specifically military stuff, specifically mecha stuff, and everything down the middle. So people who write reports on the military formations and strategies used in Ukraine, all the way down to people just talking about and breaking down analyzing tanks from all the way back from World War II till today. Then at 4th, you basically have things such as review and information, which on its own it might sound a little confusing, but basically these are the people who are reviewing something like food, for example, movies, as well as information, which is basically the people who are creating the doujin equivalent of a video essay, except they're writing it down on a piece of paper instead. So people analyzing all of the different interesting ways that color theory is being used in anime to achieve specific effects, all the way down to people writing an entire fucking essay on how best to reach Mythic in Magic the Gathering or something. Everything down the line that can be written about in an analytical or in a video essay form, people are basically writing it in the form of an actual physical essay instead and selling it at this event, and that actually reaches 4th. And in 5th, you have cosplay. So in general, it's very rare to see a single series in the top 5 to begin with, because VTubing is there, because VTubing in its entirety is very popular. And in the past, you had maybe exceptions, but this were only for stuff like FGO as well as Toho many years ago. So it is not something common. and Blue Archive has actually managed to, in spite of the fact that it doesn't have the most massive player base, beat out all of the competition to come out on top. So congratulations to the series that seems to be the biggest boogeyman of Twitter apparently, for getting to the top once again and showing those weirdos on Twitter what's what, I guess. Which this ranking is interesting mostly to me perhaps because of the fact that it goes to show that even till today, when you talk about Comiket, it is more the hobbyist stuff in general that tends to come out on top. That said, this might be a little bit of a bias in the way that the hobbyist stuff is being portrayed, because when everything is just lumped into one, obviously it's gonna look a lot bigger, but it's interesting to see how big most of the non-anime related stuff can still be within the event itself as well. But if we take out all of this hobbyist stuff and look purely at just anime IPs as well as VTubing, you have Uma Musume in third, which it actually managed to preserve that position pretty well, since it actually doesn't suffer as much of a drop in the number of circles as the other IPs, only losing about 50 plus, followed by Type Moon in fourth, barely hanging on there still, although the drop was quite about the same as many of the other bigger IPs, so it managed to preserve that position, but it has many close competition. Meanwhile, Toho 2 also saw a very small decline compared to the rest of the IPs, and so because of that, it actually managed to take over Idolmaster as being the fifth most plentiful circle number creators for the event, which is also to me quite interesting to see that Uma Musume is still third, because once again, for people who are a little off the loop, this is an IP that at this point has no NSFW content, which is something that people might characterize Doujin content, especially the ones so in Comiket with, in part due to the restrictions put on it by the K-Bar and side games, preventing the creation of such content. I know that outside of Japan, people can get a little more adversarial with whether or not to follow these restrictions, but within Japan, the Doujin community tends to follow it, so we really are talking about all of the people here having been vetted by the community to ensure that they don't infringe on the guidelines and then being allowed to sell at the event. So it is kind of interesting to see that in spite of the fact that no adult content is being sold for these series, it is still one of the top few within the event. But yeah, as I mentioned before, this period has been hit by quite a lot of natural disasters as well as freak weather. In fact, this Comiket has been the hottest Comiket on record, not in terms of the number of sexy cosplayers there are, but in quite literally the fact that the temperature actually got up to 37 degrees at some points, which is on record the highest it's been at all time. Although that said, every single Comiket thus far has been that for the last few summers, so if anyone ever needed proof that global warming actually exists, you just need to show them the temperature during Comiket every single year, and you'll probably see that from C100 it went from a top of 34 to 36 last Comiket, to 36 in Comiket 102 last summer, and then now to 37 this year, so it has been steadily getting a lot worse, and the more it goes up, the more it feels like I might need to update the Comiket preparation video I did before. Thankfully, from what I heard, like most of the people who did use it, or who at least messaged me about it, did seem to at least survive it, so I'm glad the video was of use. But that said, if the temperature is gonna keep going up, there's gonna be a lot more that a person will need to take into consideration to keep themselves safe rather than just the things I mentioned then, so I might consider making a new, more updated video for the next summer, but that will probably be in next year instead. But as a result of how hot it was, there were quite a few reports, especially in the east side car park, of people collapsing during the wait to enter the event as well as inside the event venue, so things weren't the best. Frankly, I feel like the event should be moved to a period where it's more cooling rather than during this period where it's basically in the middle of some of the hottest time in summer, but that doesn't seem like it's gonna be happening soon. So yeah, if you guys ever do come for the event in the future, make sure to be very careful with the heat especially, and prep properly, because you don't want to go into this blind and end up getting some form of heat injury, because that does seem to be on the rise. And even when I went into the hall, it's like you can tell that many of the people were kind of out of it due to the heat as well, because one thing you have to understand is that 37 is the temperature outside, but once you get into the hall, because of the poor ventilation as well as the sheer number of people in there, the temperature can rise by a few degrees, so it's only gonna get worse inside. And there were quite a few people who just seemed zoned out completely and were just like bumping and shoving their way through others, more so than before. Might be due to the heat. I don't want to consider it just people being bigger assholes than the last time, even though there's no real reason for it, so maybe the heat just made everyone a little weird this time. So remember to take care, stay hydrated, and find ways to keep your body cool as well. That said, when it comes to people behaving weird because of the heat, it does seem like there were quite a few very strange and abnormally weird cases of people doing weird shit during the event as well. First one is the one that I'm sure some of you may have already seen on websites like Twitter, for example, where there was a guy who had an entire complete meltdown. So for those of you who are wondering what is happening, he was basically shouting, "Let me buy so no Frieren," which is this Frieren. And he's shouting that like there's not much left. Please let me buy it, please. And he was just like freaking out at the spot, and the staff was manhandling him. So looking at the video on its own, this probably should have happened midway through whatever scene was happening in the first place, because it is not very common for the staff to manhandle someone like this right off the bat. Typically, if someone tries to cut into a queue, they would just stand there and like block the guy and be like, "Hey, no, go back," and like try to get you to de-escalate the thing in the more peaceful way. And it's only when things look like it's gonna get very bad that you would start to see them manhandle people like this. Plus the fact that there were already like 3 to 4 staff members on spot ready to like help with dealing with the guy, and the fact that the cameraman already has camera out probably meant that some stuff had been happening before this, but people only really started filming at this point. And yeah, he became quite a meme in the Japanese Twitter as well around the time, with people like basically making like text bites out of what he was saying at the time. I don't know if we'll get like meme drawings of him like the way with some other people who turned into memes in the past, but we'll have to see when it comes to that. But that said, well, it's fun to look at these people and like laugh at them for how weird they're being. You know, let's not be too hard on the guy as well. From the looks of it, he seems fairly young. And from what I heard so far about most of the people attending Comiket, like the last few Comikets, it does seem like there are a lot of people for whom Comiket is something that they only really started attending around C100. So you have a lot of people who are fairly fresh and inexperienced with all of this. So people probably aren't as well planning for the event itself and when to go, what to do, how to keep yourself like healthy and safe and spot the heat, all of that in general. So he does look like he may have been one of those people. And there's also the fact that, and this might be just like data that I got from my own research, so it might be a little off, but basically it would seem that the queue for the Frieren booth that he was trying to queue for was probably around 3 to 4 hours long. The 3 to 4 hours is my own estimate, just putting it out there as a pre-warning. This is due to the fact that the queue essentially stretched from the start of East Hall 1 all the way to East Hall 3 across the length of the convention center, and then started to snake back. So it was extremely long, and my own personal experience is that queues like that, with the number of cashiers that the circles typically would have, might take somewhere around there. Typically when you see a circle like this is essentially what I would personally call like a dead circle, in the sense that if you enter this circle's queue, Comiket is dead to you at this point. You won't be able to do anything else after you've queued for the circle. So he probably was trying to get into that, and if so, he may have gotten in at the wrong time, or he may have been in for a while, only to get fairly close to the front, only to hear that they had announced that the thing that he wanted to get was probably running out, and like in some level of hopeless despair, he may have just done all of this. We don't know the full context of it because no information has come out of it, but at the same time, knowing how bad the queue was, how bad the weather was, and the potential inexperience of the people taking part, I can't like shit on the guy too much. It is kind of fucked up to try to like wedge yourself into the queue like this in the first place, but yeah, moderation when clowning on the fool. Then on an even more negative note, perhaps, we'll keep the negative stuff to the minimum, but we'll just end off of this one. But apparently there's a case of some weirdo going after and touching and like grabbing a cosplayer during the event itself. Now, well, this might be something people don't really want to hear too much about. We need to like at least talk about this a little so that people understand that this is something that is not very normal. But basically what happens is that a cosplayer called Keiki Hime, who has been attending like quite a few events globally as well, cosplaying. Apparently some stalker dude apparently came up from behind and just grabbed her and started groping her, which very fucked up that this even happened in the first place. Thankfully, thanks to the cameraman who was like taking pictures of her for her cosplay originally, they managed to get a few pictures of the dude who apparently assaulted her and managed to get it to the necessary authorities, so the whole thing got settled in time. Yeah, this is kind of sad that this had to happen to her in the first place, because like this frankly shouldn't be happening at all, and has never really happened as far as I know to this extent in the last like few years of Comiket. From what I know, usually people are a lot more civil with this. Turns out the guy is someone who goes online by the alias Rick-san, like Rick Roll, Rick Ashley, that Rick. And he's been involved with quite a few very shady activities that many needs within Japan get up to. And on top of that, he's also someone who apparently has been known to like try to get into events for free and just run out without paying for them. So someone who overall is not the best of people. So good that they managed to identify and like get him the justice he deserves. But yeah, the reason why I'm saying all this is not to tell you guys to not do it, because I'm sure all of you already are civil and rational enough people to know that this is something fucked up and should not be done in the first place. The fact that y'all have the money to, you know, travel all the way to Japan to experience this event, whether or not you enjoy the suffering and hellfire that you went through, you probably at least are of a level of, you know, rationality to know like what is a crime and what should not be done regardless. And so I'm not going to tell you guys to not do it, but just like with the Chinese photographer who helped to expose this piece of shit who did this thing, if you guys see it happen the next time you guys are here, you don't have to directly intervene and punch the guy in the face if you don't want to be that confrontational, but at least help to assist if you see it happen and make sure that these people like actually get the justice that they deserve. We'll just end it on that, cause yeah, this is quite a negative thing, and so far there isn't very much information out aside from this about what has happened. And it does seem like the cosplayer herself wants to get over it fairly peacefully without like too much trauma or like this blowing up too much. So we will just leave it at this here. But yeah, between the disasters and the weirdos in the event, it does seem like it kind of entered a little bit of negative territory. So let's end off with something a little more positive. So apparently in the corporate booths this time around, it was great to see that once again, like with last winter, many of the visual novel companies were back. So like Alisoft, Basin, Frontwing, August. Like this is a lot more of a throwback to earlier years of Comiket, so it's nice to see all of them there again. Unfortunately, they weren't really going there to announce and do big events like they used to in the past, which is a shame since these are some of the rare few events where they can actually like do all of this. But either way, it's cool to see them back just selling merch even if that's just all they are doing. Apparently, MiHoYo got even more booth space this time around. I think they had like close to 2 massive booth areas to market all of their different goods, so way bigger than it has been till this point. For the MiHoYo fans out there, this is probably good news for you guys, but frankly, it was so packed in that area that I just could not get close to the booth. So as much as it would have made more sense for me to like to go there, take pictures and show you guys a video of everything happening at the booth, and you kind of realize that if I wanted to squeeze towards the booth, it would probably take me an hour plus of just to get near the booth, at which point all of the other stuff that I wanted to go around looking at, I probably wouldn't have had the time to do it. So I had to manage my time efficiently, and so we really couldn't go very close to it. That said, what was interesting was the fact that many of the corporate booths, and I don't know if they coordinated this or something, but it does feel like there was a lot more mini games going on there as well. Like you had Fanza DMM with their little crane game thing in conjunction with that one trap VTuber. That's a thing that happened apparently. You have YoStar having the Momo Friends thing they did during the Blue Archive Fest a while back, where it's just like a horse racing thing, as well as something for Azure Lane where you were. You know, it's Azure Lane. I'm not gonna judge, especially because, you know, Azure Lane has been Azure Lane for like, since Azure Lane was Azure Lane. All I'm gonna say is that I got gold. So according to Azure Lane, it would seem that I would make for a very professional masseuse for Ku-chan. So if I ever decide to quit my job as a game developer, I guess I know what I can do in the future. And I'm not talking about YouTube, I'm talking about... So yeah, there was a lot of that. I think, was it Honey Parade, the one that does the Senran Kagura stuff as well, also had their own strange roulette thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And also quite a few live stage performances, since there were quite a few, especially towards the end of the day, one at the energy drinks stage, as well as one further off, and I didn't manage to see where the booth was, but it was quite hyped seeing all the people just like doing the, the stuff and all. So all of that I found to be quite fun. Feels like it's been a while since I last saw all of this, so it's cool to see that, like, while there are groups going there to sell things, I mean, Hoyo was mostly selling things and having a cosplay area. You did have booths like Yo Stuff, for example, where they weren't really selling anything at all and just giving people fun shit to do during the event to chill. Well, I mean, as chill as far as you can in the blasting hit that was experienced throughout the area. And aside from that, I guess for the Blue Archive people, especially who probably might be here as well, since you guys were some of the first people to be very cool to watch my videos as well. The Blue Archive big names such as Blue Sechi, the animator, actually came down, and apparently his booth managed to sell out in the first 1 hour as well, like most of the stuff aside from the book itself, which was kinda rough but funny. Initially I was planning to gun for that booth as well to just get a little bit of the funny stuff that he had made, but apparently before an hour had passed into the event, just as I got into the queue, everything was sold out except the book, so I just went somewhere else instead. I guess it can't be helped due to the fact that this is the first time he has come for something like on the scale of Comiket. And the thing is that I think this might be the first time he has ever done an event in Japan as well. So coming to the biggest event outside of Korea, where, to be honest, it's not like people in Korea don't want his stuff. It's just more that, like, even if you miss one event, you can probably go to the next one and probably see him there and see him fairly regularly across all the events and know that you can probably get the stuff that he's making now, or at least maybe he might reprint some of the stuff and release it here as well. So there is less of a time pressure. People may not rush as hard, but with something like Comiket, one of the biggest events in Japan, if not the biggest, and all the people coming from all over the world seeing him here for the first time, it probably would make the queue itself pretty bad, which is what happened this time. It's not on the level of the Bochi the Rock artist, but it definitely caused a lot of congestion within the hall itself, since his queue actually was like lining up within the hall in a way that, like, it would just cause the area to be unnecessarily full of people as a result. That said, all I really have to say about all of this is hey, welcome to Comiket, Sechi. Yeah, that's probably gonna be that packed. At least now he knows probably better, like, how many people he can expect to see coming. So if he ever does come again, maybe we might see the supply issue be less of an issue, but either way it was cool to see him doing as well as he did. But yeah, I guess overall this were the bigger things that happened this Comiket. There were quite a few of them, some more negative than positive, but I feel like it's in part due to the summer heat as well. So we're gonna need to lock in the next time around and be more prepared for the heat. That said, I did find some really interesting stuff during the event this time around. Some anime related, some not so much, some I don't know what I'm even looking at, but it's all interesting to me at least, so we'll go over it real quick now. So we'll start with the least anime related thing as I have in general, which was that I found a guy who basically had a really old school camera at his booth. And by that I don't mean like a hipster going around with his like 20-year-old Polaroid camera going like, ooh, chick, you're growing my cringe compilation, or something like weird like that. I mean like a guy with a literal wet plate camera that looks like it came from close to like 100 years ago, if anything. And apparently the guy, I mean, him and his boss, they run a studio within Shinjuku where they do a lot of wet plate photography still alongside all other forms of photography, and he was just there to show to people what the quality of wet plate photography nowadays could look like and all of the different nuances, and just explain that and just show it to people. So a very different style of both, I guess, with a very specific niche and interest. So I found that really cool, and we just like talked for quite a fair bit. And he showed me some of the pictures he took of like random people and like with their, just told me their story, and it was all like fairly interesting. So I decided that, like, yeah, you know, maybe one day I might want to like go there and just take a picture if he really does do the wet plate stuff like as our service, just for the fun of it. And I also bought a nice looking like poster there. I don't know why I did that, cause now I am the proud owner of a picture of a random Japanese dude from, I think, Yamaguchi Prefecture. Yeah, no, this isn't a bit. Like, he literally did not know who this guy was, and he just like was like, dude, why the fuck are you wearing this in summer? And the guy was like, I don't know, man. And I was like, let me take a picture. And then like this was apparently how this came about. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. Obviously, when you look around my room, right, you know, like it's not something that I would want to have like blending in with all of this, especially since I don't think I want these eyes staring at me when I wake up every morning. So that said, I still want to put this around the house because it looks kind of cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put it in the guest room which someone is crashing in right now, and I'm just gonna hang it there and just not say a word to him because like right now he's in Hokkaido, so he has no idea what is gonna happen at all. He's probably gonna come and think everything is normal, and he's just gonna have this picture of this dude staring at him when he comes back, and we'll see what his reaction is when that happens. That said, I guess what room is just too messy, stuff is just falling all over the place. Help. You know, sometimes I wonder if some of the stuff is one day just gonna fall on me and just kill me instead. That aside, yeah, I guess what I really want to show with that is just the variety of stuff you can find at Comiket, because it's not just about anime SFW versus NSFW, but also about hobbies and interests of people overall, because that's where the concept of Doujin comes from. It's not just used to refer to like content created about anime by fans, but just content created by fans or like people with similar interests for people with similar interests. So this includes everything all the way from like foodies to travelers to, you know, trains, military otakus, anime, and all of that. So I just wanted to show a little bit of the other stuff that exists at events like this. On the safe for work side of stuff, unlike in terms of the interesting stuff I found, I actually found this compilation doujin book by some groups, like so by multiple circles basically, where they just did a compilation of Love Life and City Hunter. Yeah, no, really, it really is just an entire book of like people making different doujins. Basically, you can see the names of all of the artists over here. And basically, all of them got together and each did a short doujin, which they all compiled into a book purely around the theme of Love Life characters meeting City Hunter characters. Why they did this? I don't know, man. All I can say is that is certainly a cover of all time. And the contents itself is pretty interesting. Needless to say, because of the fact that it's all made by different artists, you can get quite a big variety in terms of the quality of the art being made. So like some of it is just a little bit more obviously better than the rest. But putting that aside, it's just interesting to see the types of content that people come up with for the sake of the memes at events like this. And I guess this is one of those things that perhaps is a little more common in Japanese events rather than events overseas. At least that's what I'm hearing, at least from all of the people who talk about like AX and the like, where you really do get just a lot of very strangely bizarre books like this, more so in Japanese events, and it is something I do like to go through as well, in part because of how bizarre some of the cross-ups are, like Madoka I guess like Madoka and JoJo crossovers as well. That was another bizarre one that I really liked back in the day, although that one has ended as far as I know, the Doujin circle that was making that. So yeah, plenty of weird crossovers at the event, and it's something that I really like. Just because of the fact that the entire screen will probably get blocked up and it might get really difficult to see which circles are which on the screen. Here is the page of the book with all of the circles details on it. And on the topic of other interesting stuff you can find there, obviously there's also music. I feel like I've featured music quite a few times before, but one thing that we really haven't featured as much is probably games. So I actually went through the game section this time quite a fair bit as well. I think maybe 2 Comikets back, I showed a game that was made for the MSX Turbo, I think. Or it was for a fairly old PCSX engine. Oh wait, no, it's right here. Yeah, it's for the MSX Turbo, right? A game basically made for a form of PC that no longer exists, wherein your game comes like this. And that was cool, if not for the fact that I can't actually play this, so like I can only put this here because you need a very specific OS that I do not have. But there are many interesting new modern games that people are making at this event, just like how that was only made in 2022 for a non-existent console, but there are some on the PC, and so I wanted to show you guys some of them, especially the ones that have at least some level of playability overseas without having to do the whole locale thing in the video I talked about previously. The only thing with the Doujin games is that I don't really have a physical copy to show you guys for it, like for me to hold here and go like, yeah, here's the thing, due to the fact that I kind of realized that most of them actually do have a Steam page now, and it will be really difficult to get them to explain to me on the spot with like the level of limited visual aid they have what the game was about as well. That's one thing I kind of realized with this. Like, it's a lot easier to show people what your book has in store, but when it comes to the PC games, while the area itself does have like many people with their computers set up to show you what the game is about, especially if they're going through multiple games, sometimes they don't really have the time to attend to each individual person and show them every single like game separately. So most of them actually do have a Steam page, and so I was like, yeah, you know what, your thing looks kind of interesting, but since you don't really have a playable demo here other than like whatever you showed me, I guess I'll go home and like try out the game on Steam instead. So for the most part, most of the games I do have it on Steam instead, and so I figured we could just talk about some of the ones that I saw at Comiket. So the first one is called Armaments. It's a fairly simple incremental game, I suppose, with some level of an alchemy system mixed into it. For the most part, I would say it really does lean more into the incremental genre, whether or not this is intentional, because they do posture or like try to sell the game as a store management slash alchemy thing. So if you think about it, kind of like the Atelier games, except that, however, I would say if you had to compare it to an Atelier game, it would be closer to something like Nerke, where the battles were fairly just automated and the game did feel a lot more simple. Although this game did cost 1,200 yen, so it's a lot cheaper than something like Nerke. Although I would say for an incremental title, maybe it might be a little too much. Although nowadays, especially with the enyasu, as people like to call the depreciation itself as well, it really does feel like 1,000 yen on Steam thereabout is it's fine-ish to me at least. And they do seem to be producing a lot more titles. This title on its own, it's a fairly okay incremental game, which for those of you who do not know what incremental game is, it's basically something like a cookie clicker. I think that's the most iconic one people might think of, but you do have many games within that genre that tend to have a bit more plot. Stuff like Alter Ego, for example. And there's also stuff like Paperclip, which you can play for free on your browser. There are plenty of different forms of incremental games, some with more plot to it. And this one is somewhere in the middle, where you have a kind of simple-ish Atelier, perhaps maybe more like Reciteer-ish plot, with gameplay, a battle system that is really just fully an automated battle, except you can choose when to retreat back to town. And that's about all the decision making you get, aside from choosing what gear to equip as well. So more on the simple side, I guess you could say it reminds me a little bit of a Kairosoft title in the level of simplicity and the style of the graphics as well. And I found it to be fine for what it is, especially when you consider that it's just made by a small interest group, more of a new, fairly fresh indie developer, or like I say, a Doujin game creator. It wasn't too bad, so I found it to be interesting, and I figured, if they're gonna hopefully improve from here on out, and this would be something I'm willing to support, so I just purchased the game as well. In the second game that I bought, this one was a little bit like, I don't know what the hell was going on, in the sense that, like, okay, look, it's a simple yandere horror visual novel. Now, that in and of itself, people might be like, yandere, what the fuck? I didn't know you're into that. Or like, you might be thinking like, what is even going on? Why is this guy talking about a visual novel here? And the reason for that is because, well, yes, this is indeed a Doujin game sold at Comiket, but the yandere in question is voiced by Tanaka Rie. Yeah, that's right, Tanaka Rie, who basically has voiced plenty of characters in the past. I mean, many of you probably remember or have heard that name somewhere or another, I would believe. I think she does voice some stuff in more recent, like, popular games like Genshin as well, but aside from that, she did voice characters in stuff like Rosen Maiden, Hayate no Gotoku. Look, she's been like in the industry for a really long time. Fairly popular name. Somehow she's voicing this Doujin game in the year 2024. Like, I don't know how they managed to get her for this part, to be honest. And the opening itself as well, it's by Shimotsuki Haruka, the person who did the opening, or I think it's the ending for Rosen Maiden. She worked on some of the older Atelier stuff as well, Artonerico. Like, she names that are surprisingly big for a Doujin visual novel. So yeah, the fact that they managed to get all of this was quite a surprise. The game is also on Steam. However, unlike the first game where you do actually have English support, I don't know if this visual novel does. Yeah, I went back to be doubly sure of it, and the game indeed does not have English support, unfortunately. However, if there are people out there who are interested in translating it, hey, now the opening of the visual novel song is playing in the background. That actually spooked me a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, if there's any of you who's interested in like trying to do a fan translation for this, hey, go ahead. Like, I'm just surprised, to be honest, that they managed to get a few fairly big names working on it. It makes it feel that like perhaps the people who are working on the title may be working under an alliance. It might be actually bigger than we think that they are. So yeah, if there's anyone out there who's interested in trying it out, the game is only in Japanese. It'll probably make for a good language practice. And yeah, if you want to try translating it, yeah, go ahead. I don't know how big the game is because I'm not done with it yet since Comiket was just yesterday, but this and the previous title both I just found to be interesting in their own unique ways. But that's it. Yeah, I guess that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all for watching. In terms of the stuff I bought, there is a lot more stuff, of course, which is just lying around behind me. Stuff like the Blue Archive artists' other stuff, as well as quite a few of the fairly old school Nanoha Doujin circles works as well. There's a lot of stuff just lying around. It's just that going through all of it would probably make this video super long, and I don't know how interested people would be in me just going through everything that I bought in my haul. So we'll just leave it as here for all of the uniquely interesting stuff I found at the event. And if there are enough people who are interested in the rest of the stuff, and maybe one day I might make another video about that, or I might put it on like the Patreon or something. I don't know. We'll have to see. I really do not know if anyone will be interested in this, so I haven't done or thought of too much about doing all of it yet. But yeah, do let me know in the comments down below. But that said, this is all for this video. Thank you all for watching. This may not be the best video to say this, but hey, if you guys want to support the channel on Patreon or just through PayPal, do feel free to support the channel. It helps make more, not so much videos like this, but to some extent it does, especially for events where I'm traveling further out rather than just for Comiket, as well as for some of the other smaller events that I'm usually just take time to go to as well for this channel, on top of helping to provide me with the props needed, not so much in this case, but in terms of the stuff I use for the other bigger video projects, such as the game industry related ones, or for the just Kosoge related ones as well. So if you guys are interested in any of that, do feel free to help support the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe. Also, thank you to Hayden the Historian for helping to edit this video, because like I already found that this period specifically, if I want to get the video out in time for like the week after Comiket, while kind of being really like sunburned and a little sick and having other stuff I need to deal with during the week, it might be a little difficult. So I got their help to edit this video. I don't know if they did, but they maybe have put their icon, the channel profile icon, and maybe a place for you to check them out. They do make some fairly interesting videos on just analyzing and breaking down certain anime genres as well as series. So if you're interested in all of that, that's another cool channel you can check out. I saw some of their stuff in the past as well, and I found it quite interesting. So we talked here and there, and they were willing to help edit this video, which I'm really grateful for, since like yeah, this week is just and thank you to everyone who watches the videos in general as well. It really does help a lot that you guys all watch it, and I'm grateful that you guys enjoy it, more importantly. So thank you all once again. With that said, I'll be heading off now. I'm heading out of town for the next few days to settle some stuff. So until next time, take care and bye-bye.